And now I get the pleasure of introducing our two keynote speakers. But before I do that, I just remembered that I forgot to add at the top of the program that today's program is being recorded. You will get a link to that recording in a follow-up email. We will have time for questions at the end of the first and second parts of the program. So if you here in the room could raise your hand, I will get a microphone to you. And for those in our virtual audience, if you could put your questions in the chat box. I have one of our colleagues with the AARP Virginia monitoring the chat box as well. Our speakers this morning are Paul Greenwood and Kate Kleinert. Kate's story is one of millions reported to AARP's Fraud Watch Network every year. She shared her story with the Senate Special Committee on Aging and has graciously agreed to share her story with us here today. But first, I'm going to start our program with Paul Greenwood. Paul is one of AARP's fraud fighting experts. He's a retired San Diego Deputy District Attorney and headed up the Elder Abuse Prosecution Unit for over 20 years, prosecuting over 750 cases of physical, emotional, financial elder abuse. Mr. Greenwood also provides training to law enforcement and adult protective services agencies across the country. So please give a warm welcome to Paul Greenwood.
Well, thank you so much, Trudy. Good morning to you all. It's great to see a room full and also online. A special thanks, especially to AARP for the organization. You want me to move? Oh, to be on the camera. I suppose that helps, doesn't it? Sorry. Okay, I see now. Okay. Have you ever met a lawyer who's never been shy of the camera? No, of course not. Silly me. And, but AARP have been phenomenal in organizing this event. Your volunteers, your paid staff members, thank you so much. And a special thanks to your supervisors, to the Congressman's office, to the state senator who was here. It really is important, as Melissa has acknowledged, to get the backing of your local government in what we're trying to do, which is pursue the predators who are out there trying to take advantage, particularly of older adults. I've been a very proud member of AARP for 21 years. Oh, I just gave away my age. Oh, how silly of me. And I know you heard Trudy tell you that I'm a former deputy district attorney from San Diego, but you're thinking, you don't sound like a Southern California dude. Are you an imposter? No, I'm not. I'm very blessed that my wife imported me 32 years ago to San Diego. And my wife, bless her heart, is sitting right there in the back. She's the love of my life. Can you just start, darling? This is Sue Greenwood. And in August, we'll be celebrating our 45th wedding anniversary. So that's the reason we live in San Diego, I was born and raised in the UK, and I was a lawyer in England for 13 years. I also want to give special thanks to a very person who's become a very dear friend of ours, and that is Liz Buser from AARP. Liz, can you just wave your hand? This is Liz. Liz and another colleague, Seth, were very instrumental in reaching out to me. You know, I made a very tough decision back in 2018 at the age of 66 to move on from my career as a prosecutor. I felt deep in my heart that I wanted to share lessons that I'd learned in the courtroom on how to protect older adults, because I had been face to face with predators through the courtroom and prosecuted them. And I felt that there was something that I should be doing to pass on the information. Well, little did I know that AARP came calling. And it was a wonderful fit for me. And this has been just an exciting part of my career, is having opportunities like this to share with you. So thank you, Liz. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, AARP, for allowing me to do this. And during this wonderful journey with AARP, I've also had the opportunity to meet some amazing people. And you're going to meet one now, Kate Kleinert. And I'm going to allow Kate to tell her story in a minute, but you'll excuse me because I will politely interrupt her. She doesn't know when, she doesn't know how, but I will interrupt her because I love to ask questions. Now, half the time, I don't know what question I'm going to ask. And it's fun when you're in the courtroom and you're kind of, but you know, you listen to where the witness is taking you in the story. And there were times when I will interrupt Kate and say, oh, excuse me, explain that a bit more. Kate has got an amazing story. There's two things that I've learned that we have in common, at least two things. We're both avid tea drinkers. And secondly, we share the same birthday. Isn't that right? March 15th. Both our mothers said, beware the Ides of March. Okay. So Kate, why don't you join me? And Kate's said she's willing to stand, but if you want to, feel free to have a seat. But so Kate's going to join us. So I'm just going to ask you, first of all, to introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us where you're from and what you do in your career.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be here. And I'm so grateful to be able to tell my story. It was almost worth going through to be able to help people along the way. I was originally living in Glenolden, Pennsylvania, which is in Delaware County. And I'll get to why I moved. But 2 weeks ago, I moved to Lancaster and had a tremendous amount of help from AARP and the IAFCI, who came to help me that day move in. So it's been wonderful. I was an executive secretary during my career, and I left my job when my husband became so ill that someone needed to be with him full time. So I stayed with him for 2 years, taking care of him around the clock until he passed. And since then, I have been taking in hospice dogs because I learned things from taking care of my husband. So taking care of the dogs just kind of was a natural progression for me. It doesn't bother me to give shots or change bandages or fix IVs or what have you. So, and then this happened, and now I'm on a speaking tour most days out telling my story.
And so what was, prior to becoming on a speaking tour, what was your main primary career in, and what else have you been doing with the Catholic community?
I am a secular Franciscan, which no one probably in this room knows what that is, but that's okay. It's the greatest secret of the Catholic Church. St. Francis thought that there were a group of people who wanted to do more with their faith, but not quite as much as becoming a nun or a priest. So he started an order for lay people. And I am what is known as the regional minister. I have 723 seculars that I watch out for, and that keeps me pretty busy too.
Wow. You mentioned your late husband. Can you, if you don't mind telling us, when did he pass away?
Ernie passed away in 2009. He had been sick on and off for 10 years. And it was always a thorn in my side that we never had children. Mm-hmm. But when it came time that he was sick, I saw the wisdom of that, because I could not have taken care of him around the clock like I did if we had young children running around that needed to be taken to soccer or what have you. So sometimes blessings are hard to swallow, but they're there.
And after several years, obviously readjusting to life as a widow, did there come a time when you decided that you wanted to reach out socially to find possibly a friendship somewhere?
No.
Until when?
I never did. I never went on a dating site. I never had a friend try and fix me up. It just was not what I wanted to do. My heart was still married to my husband. So I did go on Facebook, but not looking for someone.
And what happened on Facebook, which led to this story beginning?
It was in August of 2020, and we were in the lockdown then. We had all been locked in for several months at that point. And although I listed myself as a widow on Facebook, which probably was a mistake, but I had received many requests, friend requests from all kinds of gentlemen, and never answered them. I would never accept friendship from any of them. But this one day, this man sent a friend request. He was very handsome, said he was a surgeon working in the Middle East through a contract with the UN. And read my profile. He loved dogs too, loved gardening, loved all the things I had listed, and just wanted to get to know me. So I don't know what in the world made me hit that accept button that day, but I did. And I accepted his friendship, and life has not been the same since.
So I'm not on Facebook, but when you get a request like that, did he actually attached a photo? Did he?
Yes, yes, very handsome man. I don't know. Can you bring up that first slide, please?
And while we're doing that, what else did he tell you? That he was a surgeon working where?
In Iraq. He was there, like I said, through this contract with the UN. Very handsome man. Although I couldn't figure out what in the world he wanted with me, but you know, I don't know whether I just said what the heck and went for it, but that he was widowed as well, had 2 young children, because he had been married to a much younger woman, and his kids were supposedly 12 and 15. So that's why they were younger. And he told me he was my age, but none of that's true.
When you accepted his invitation, how quickly did he start communicating with you, and what form did that communication take?
For the first couple of days, we just messaged back and forth on Facebook. But then he said he really wanted to hear my voice, and could we start talking through an app? And he asked me to download Hangout, which I believe is not available still. It's turned into Google Chat or the WhatsApp app. And I have since learned that those apps are not traceable by anyone. And that's their advertising, that no one can trace any calls that are made through that system. So we did start to talk, and I have to say, it had been many years since I'd had a conversation with a man like that. And it was really nice to hear somebody say at the end of the day, "How was your day, honey?" You know, there wasn't anyone in my life that said that. So I guess I got sucked into that, but
so you would hear his voice through what, your computer or through a phone?
Through our laptops. It would ring like a phone call, but I would just go answer that, and we talked through. So there was never any face-to-face meetings with him.
Did you ever ask him to try to go on a website where you could actually see his face?
Yes, I did. And he told me that being in Iraq and being in the war zone like he was, it wasn't safe for him to show his face. And he really, talked that up, that he couldn't do this. So I kind of believed him. There was enough truth, I think, to that it was credible to me that he wasn't allowed to show his face.
And so how often would you have this hangout with him? Would it be like on a daily basis or weekly or what?
Oh, it was daily. And after a while, it was 5 or 6 times a day.
Wow.
Can you do the next slide, please?
So what's this?
These are some of the things that he said to me. He certainly knew what to say. He was a charming, handsome man, very charming. That quote in the middle, "When I first saw you, I was afraid to talk to you. When I first talked to you, I was afraid to like you. When I first liked you, I was afraid to love you. Now that I love you, I'm afraid to lose you."
How soon after he started this communication with you did he send that or say that?
Fairly soon. I have since found that on the internet. It's not his words, but part of a romance, I think a romance handbook, that's where it came from.
And what else? Let's see now. If you ask me when I want to be with you, my answer will be now and forever, Tony. When did he say that?
Oh, somewhere along the line. He got romantic very quickly. And I pushed back because I didn't even know this guy. And I hadn't been in conversations with the man for many years. And for him to suddenly say, "I love you," it's like, what the heck is that? I'm not ready for that. I am nowhere near that.
Sure.
thank you so much for sharing the story, and thank you for this session. I just wondering, when you received the request from him, out of curiosity, you didn't type his name to search more about him, about his background, about his being engaged with the UN. UN is a very famous organization, and to get more to know who is he
Before he
accepting.
was, yes.
Just curious to know what.
I did. And for the first few days, he had a Facebook account with these pictures and, but no friends listed, which I should have, that should have been a, red flag right there. It did have the same sort of information that he had given me was on that Facebook page, but that disappeared. And so did his friend request to me. I don't know how the world he did that, but so I didn't have anything to hold on to or try to find out who he was or where he was coming from. But at that point, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I just thought I hit the jackpot.
And before he engaged in this relationship with you, had you heard about what people commonly refer to as the romance scam?
I don't think I really heard the words romance scam. I knew you couldn't trust all these folks on Facebook or other social media. And that's why I never accepted a friend request from the others, because I was seeing a trend on those pictures of people who were asking me to be a friend. They were either military, or so many of them were on an oil rig somewhere, which I'm sure, fed into their needing money and not being able to have it where they were.
How long sometimes would these conversations on Hangout be for? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or longer?
It depended. And looking back, if I started to question him, he'd say, "Oh, there goes my beeper. I've got to get back to the hospital."
And so there were times when you would probe him for information about his background. Is that right?
Yes.
So give us an example of the type of question you would ask him.
Well, he sent me pictures of himself almost every day. He had quite a collection of these pictures, and they do not look like someone my age. And I would say, "You look so young." And no. And I finally said to him one day, "Quick, what year were you born?" And he said, "Oh, I've got to go." And when he called me back, he said 1953. I said, "How long did that take you to figure that out, to subtract it and be the same age as me?" And again, there was this little voice in the back of my head, but I wasn't prepared to listen to it.
So how did the relationship develop after that, after this initial backwards and forwards? What happened next?
Well, he wanted the kids to get involved with this relationship, and he told me he had asked them to call me mom. Now, that is my Achilles heel. I waited all my life for somebody to call me mom. And I think that he looked at my Facebook profile and didn't see pictures of kids or grandkids. So maybe he figured out I didn't have children. So he started talking about the kids and how we were going to be a family, and he wanted to get married. It went so fast. But
how old were these children supposedly?
12 and 15. And they were supposed to be in England in a boarding school while he was in Iraq fulfilling his contract.
Okay. And the 15-year-old was a girl or a boy?
Girl.
And so the 12-year-old was a boy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then how did he introduce them more into the conversation?
He sent them my email address. Now, and again, looking back, he never had them talk to me like we were talking, because either he was acting as the two kids or someone else in that business office were acting as the two kids. But they wrote to me, called me mom, loved me, couldn't wait till we were all together again. And, it was really something that my heart yearned for. So
you were actually corresponding through email with these supposedly children in a boarding school in England. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yes.
And were you also sending emails to Tony as well, or not?
every once in a while, if he would ask me for a picture of myself or something, and he was so good, he knew that the dogs meant a lot to me. So he knew the names of every dog. And if one of them barked while we were on the phone, he'd say, "Oh, is that Trixie? Oh, is that Duffy?" And that endeared him to me because he took that interest in the dogs. So,
And how many dogs were you caring for during this period of time?
6.
And we'll talk about those a bit later, but okay, 6 dogs under one roof with
me.
you.
Yes.
Wow.
I've had as many as 9. 6 was easy.
Okay, amazing.
Yes.
So when was the first time that money was ever discussed between you and Tony?
Well, it started with his daughter sending me a frantic email that apparently during the night she had become a woman, if you get my drift, and was scared to death. And I'm thinking a 15-year-old girl in this day and age doesn't know what's happened. How can that be? But his wife had been dead for 3 years, that's what he told me, and she had had leukemia. So obviously she was sick for a few years prior to that. So that would have made her, I don't know, 10 or 12. And maybe the mom was too sick to have that talk with her. So the mother and me, of course, came out and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, let me help you." And she wanted to go to the store in the campus there and get what she needed. And she said, "Don't tell my dad, please don't tell my dad," she said in her email. But of course I did. And he asked me to get her a gift card. That was the first request for money,
And how much did he suggest the gift card should be for?
$100
And did he suggest where you should buy that gift card?
at a local pharmacy, grocery store,
What-
anywhere that they sold them.
And what type of gift card did he recommend that you buy, or did he not make a recommendation?
He did. He wanted a Visa card. Sometimes he called them a wallet, which I wasn't familiar with that term.
Had you ever purchased one of those prepaid Visa gift cards before in your life?
No, no.
And so the first time you actually went to the pharmacy and did that, did you need help to actually pay for that?
No, they're on a rack usually somewhere in the store, and I found the kind that he had asked for and just went to the counter and paid for it.
Okay. And then what were the instructions once you've paid for it? What did you have to do in terms of getting the money to this supposed daughter?
Well, again, I'm saying to him, I'm in the United States. How am I going to get this to her in England? And he said, "You just take a picture of the front of the card and the back of the card and the receipt and email that to her." And I did that. And then I checked on the number to see what balance was on there, and it was already gone. So it's very quick. And I kept saying, but in the United States, you can't take a picture of a gift card into a store and say, "Here, I want $100 of merchandise for this picture." But he said, apparently it's the way of the world over there.
And just to give us an idea of time frame, approximately how many weeks or months was it from the beginning when he first asked you to be a friend to when that $100 gift card was made?
It was 3 or 4 months before that hit.
Okay. And then what was the second incident requesting money?
Well, then his son was pouting because his sister had gotten a gift card. Now he wanted one. And then after that, it was, they both had come down with COVID and they needed medicine. Then they needed the special masks that were pretty new at that time, the N95s or whatever,
Right.
yes. And they were $100. Everything was $100.
So was there a second request for another $100?
Yes, yeah. And then he needed money because he was in Iraq and he couldn't carry money. It was way too dangerous. So, he needed, and again, this I don't understand, but he needed money to increase his signal to be able to call me, which that didn't make sense to me either. But he insisted that that's how it worked over there.
So how much was he asking for with his first request for himself?
I think he asked for 150 the first time he
Okay.
asked, but then he needed better food. He was just eating what everybody else was eating in the cafeteria, and he wanted something better. So money went for that, and it just continued.
Did you ever ask him, well, you're a surgeon, you're obviously on a good salary. How come you need this money from me? Did you ever ask him that?
I did. And he said, I'm going to pay you back the minute I get to Philadelphia. I have money. It's in a bank account in the United States. And when I kept pushing about it, he sent me, he had supposedly a bank account at Bank of America. He sent me his sign-on name, his account number, and his password. And I went on the website, of course, using the link that he sent me, but it was incredibly accurate looking. You know, it was unreal. I'm looking at this, and it's the banner streaming across the top, Bank of America. And I put in his name and password, and up came his picture, his name, and a balance of a little over $2 million.
So just to clarify, if anyone listening, he sent you to a bogus website.
Yes.
Masquerading as Bank of America account, but it was all
Yes.
cultivated by him and his cronies. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Okay. In total, how much was he asking you to give him approximately?
Well, it was little bits at a time, but it was adding up to where now it was affecting the way I was living because I was sending him all my money. But he then asked me to write a letter to his superior at the UN to give him leave to come to Philadelphia so he could meet me and pay me back. And could you do the next slide, please?
So now he starts talking to you about actually coming to meet you
Yes.
in Philadelphia. So what's this, Kate?
There's a picture of this same guy in the airport. And he called me and said, the next time we talk, honey, I'll be standing right next to you. Oh, wait, they're calling my flight. I've got to go. And I had also sent him money for the airfare to come here.
That's a very expensive pair of headphones he's wearing right
Is it?
there. Oh yeah, those are $350 at least.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh. Well,
Yeah. Okay, so this is supposedly in Iraq, is it? Is this what he's trying to tell you?
yes, yeah.
And he's about to fly to Philadelphia.
Mhm.
Okay. And when he was telling you prior to him supposedly coming, had he been asking you for more money to pay for the airfare or what?
His liaison, the man I sent the letter to, asked for the airfare, that it had to be, sent to cover him to come home. And that man said, would I please make sure he gets an invitation to the wedding?
So this letter that you were asked by Tony to write to his superior, how did you send that letter? Was it through an email attachment?
Yes.
And that was to another email address, was
Yes.
it?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
And then did you get a response from that email saying, could you please cover the airfare?
Yes.
And approximately how much was that?
$1,500.
Okay. After that request, was there any other requests for money?
Not right then. He was supposed to come to Philadelphia on December the 10th. And we had this plan that because we were still under lockdown, my family was not going to be meeting for Christmas, but we had planned a Zoom, a family-wide Zoom. And I had this wonderful plan that I was going to come on the Zoom first and then tell them Santa Claus came early to my house and have Tony come in and sit down and meet them. Because I hadn't said anything to anyone at that point.
And why was that? Why did you deliberately keep that from your was it siblings?
Three sisters.
Three
yeah.
sisters. Why did you keep it from them?
I think somewhere in the back of my head, I was telling myself, when he gets here, then you can say something, but don't say anything before that, because I'm sure some part of my brain knew this wasn't right. But
did he provide you with a flight number?
No, he's from the UN. They were sending him here,
But he told you approximately what time and what day he was going to be arriving
Yes.
at Philadelphia Airport?
He was arriving December 10th at 10 p.m. At the time, I lived 2 miles from the Philadelphia airport. So I spent most of that day getting all gussied up. You know, I had a new dress, I got my hair done, I had a bottle of champagne, and I'm waiting for him to call me and waiting and waiting. And I sat all night. And even with that happening, I was afraid something happened to him. I didn't for 1 minute think at that point that it was a scam. I thought something happened, but because I didn't have a flight number, I couldn't check on that.
So when was the first time you heard from anybody as you waited all night long for him to arrive?
It was about 8 a.m. the following morning. And it was another person. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have questions at the
Yeah.
end. Yes.
So 8 a.m. the next morning from
There's
another person.
another person called, and he said he was Tony's lawyer. And that when Tony went to get his luggage off the carousel at the airport, 2 policemen stepped up and arrested him, saying that there were drugs in his bag. Well, he's coming from Iraq. That didn't seem too far-fetched to me. I didn't think he brought them, but you know, somebody could have put them in his bag. But now he needed bail money to get out of jail. And the price of that was $20,000. And I said, I don't have $20 left. I can't do it. Oh, don't you love him? Don't you want to make sure he gets out of this jail? He's so upset being there. You really need to get him out of jail. And I said, I'm not lying. I don't have any money for bail. Well, how about selling your life insurance policy? How about selling your car? He'll buy you another car as soon as he gets out of jail. He's got the money. And I said, no, I wasn't going to do that either. And then he asked me if I would go to my family. And I thought, that's the last thing I want to do, is go ask my sisters for bail money for a fiance that they don't even know exists. You know, so he pushed a lot. And then I asked if I could be put on the visitors list to go see Tony. If he was in Philadelphia, I was 2 miles away. Oh, no, only the lawyer is allowed to go in to see him. And then when it wasn't working, Tony started calling me and he was crying and, oh, he was terrible. He needed a gift card. I said, what are you going to do with a gift card in jail? I need better food. I said, well, it doesn't work that way in the United States. You know, I need a better signal. Well, then he started calling me like 5 and 6 times a day again, begging me for this money. And I'm like, wait, buddy, you don't get privileges like that in prison here. You don't get to make 5 or 6 phone calls a day. Oh, yes, I've got special privileges. I'm here from the UN, you know, so they have to give me privileges. So like, it's now kind of creeping up on me. The lawyer called me again and I said, I want to go see him. So get me on the list. He's been transferred. I said, where did they transfer him to? Oklahoma. Now, why would someone from Philadelphia be transferred to Oklahoma? I don't think this man did his homework in geography to figure out that's not how it would have gone. And that's when the bomb went off in my head. And I really couldn't deny it anymore. You know?
And in terms of because you said I don't even have $20 left to give to you, how much in total did you calculate you had over the course of all those months sent his way?
$39,000.
Okay.
And it was all that I had. I used the end of my husband's life insurance, which killed me. My savings was gone. My 401k was gone. I truly had no money left. And $39,000 might be not such a big deal to someone who has more money, but to me, it was everything I had.
And here we are running up to Christmas of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Did you actually spend Christmas or with your family or on Zoom with your family?
We did do the Zoom, and thank God that's how we were together, because my sisters would have taken one look at my face and know that something was terribly wrong, because I think I cried from December 10th to Christmas Day over being heartbroken that this wasn't real, that someone really didn't love me. someone didn't want to marry me and spend their life with me. And the only presents I had bought that year were for his kids.
And I mean, I don't want to probe too much, but did you have any money to spend on your siblings or not?
No, because we were doing the Zoom, and my one niece and her husband and 2 kids were on a sailing trip over in Turkey, and we were going to wait and have Christmas when they came home.
Okay.
So I didn't need money for gifts at that point.
So you had a Christmas Day Zoom call with your siblings, did you? And did you put on a brave face?
I sat back pretty far from the camera so you wouldn't see exactly what I looked like. But yes, I did.
And I'm assuming during that Zoom call, you didn't mention anything about what was going on.
No.
Okay.
No.
How long did it take you before you actually did share that story with one of your siblings?
March.
And what triggered in March to make you talk to a sibling about that?
Well, I still do have a very dear friend who kept calling me and saying, I hear something in your voice. There's something wrong. If you want to tell me, fine. If you don't want to tell me, that's okay too. And after a while, she said, you really need to tell your sisters. And I said, no, I can't do that. She said, no, you've got to tell them because maybe they could help you. And I'm like, no way. I don't want to ask them for money. I don't want to do that. But it took her 3 months to talk me into it.
And so did you make a phone call to a sister?
No, I set up a Zoom because I have 3 sisters and I really wanted to tell them all at the same time so that they all heard the same thing. And knowing my sisters, I didn't want to talk to the oldest and then hang up and talk to the middle one. Now the first one's going to call the 4th one and they're all going to be in a tizzy, so I wanted to tell them at the same time. So I sent them all a text, I think, on a Friday and said, I need to talk to the 3 of you. Can you do a Zoom Sunday night? There's something I need to tell you. Now, in my head, the conversation also went like, it's not physical. I'm not sick. But apparently I did not put that in the text. So the 3 of them spent the weekend worrying and talking to each other like, what do you think it is? I'm sure it's cancer. And they were so upset. So when I told them what had happened, they were relieved.
Now, before that conversation in March, had you ever thought about approaching law enforcement to tell them what had happened to you?
Well, again, my friend said, you've got to report this. You just have to. And I lived in a very little, I wouldn't even call it a town, a little area. And you call the police and leave a message. That's how it works there. They never called me back. And it took a lot for me to get my nerve up to call because I would have to tell the story to a stranger. And I was so afraid they were going to say, how stupid could you be? Or how in the world could you have fallen for that? And I didn't want to hear it. I was doing enough of that to myself at the time. I didn't need anybody else to tell me. But my friend kept pushing me. And I called the state police. And when I called there, I got a woman. And I was so grateful because I thought it would be easier to tell the story to a woman. And her reply was, why did you call here? This isn't a crime. Well, by that point I was crying, and I'm saying, but he was supposed to pay me back all this money. And she said, you gave it to him, hun. And that was the end of the conversation. So
And did that conversation occur before you spoke to your sisters or after?
Before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you had this difficult conversation with your sisters who actually turned out to feel relieved.
Yes, they were relieved.
But did any of them give you any more advice or encourage you to go in a different direction other than the police?
Well, my sisters, thank God, were very wonderful to me. And they didn't say any of the things that were already in my head. They told me how brave I was. And I was floored by that. And within 2 days, one of my sisters called me with the phone number for the AARP Fraud Watch. It came on the magazine that comes out from AARP. I didn't get that magazine because my membership expired and I didn't have any money to renew. So I didn't get that. But she called me with this phone number. She called me. Yes, she did.
They're listening, Kate.
So is somebody else.
Yes.
And I called AARP and was transferred to a retired detective who had worked with fraud. They were the first kind words I heard. Now, my sisters were kind, but he was so helpful and said, of course it's a crime. You know, this is a felony. This is a lot of money. The last thing he said to me was, that hammer you have in your hand, hitting yourself over the head with, it's time to put it down.
Wow.
And that meant more to me. I still talk about that because that comforted me more than I can say.
Wow.
And he asked me if I'd be willing to tell my story. And here we are.
Here we are. And this next part of the story is so powerful. Kate, in the summer of 2020, here you were struggling financially. I'm
Yes.
still assuming, correct?
Yes.
What happened during the minor heat wave?
I turned on my central air conditioning and it didn't work, didn't come on. And I didn't have any money to even call in somebody to look at it, you know. So I was using a portable air conditioner, the kind that you vent out the window. It has that like a dryer hose to it. So on the morning of July 16th, all of the dogs and I were in the living room sleeping.
Oh, I see. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Explain, well, we can see it, but what is it, Kate?
That's the front of my house. I had all these dogs and all the dog beds were in the living room and I tried to put it out myself because I'm stubborn. But I knew at one point it was beyond me. And that's when the electricity went out and it was 5 a.m. So it was dark. And then all the black smoke filled the room. And they say you get disoriented quickly. And believe me, I did. I couldn't even find my way out. I went out through that, out the front door. And the dogs had gone to the back of the house. But could we have the next one, please?
Oh,
None of the dogs made it out. None of them.
which one's Trixie?
The one with their tongue out.
Okay. Wow.
So the house burnt down. I lost every single thing I owned, every paper, every picture, everything that was left from my husband. I have no material memories left. All of the Christmas ornaments we collected over the years, everything was gone.
And so you were almost like, well, you were homeless at this
Yes.
point. Where did you move to?
Well, first I got moved to the hospital into the burn unit, and I was there a few days. And then I went to one of my sister's homes and stayed there for a little while. But then I went to a hotel for several months, one of those long-term kind of places. It was one room, but it had a refrigerator and a sink and a dishwasher, microwave. But it was one room. And I'm not one to be claustrophobic, but after 4 months of that, I was, ready to pull my hair out. And they wanted to put me into an apartment. And I said, if I'm moving and I've got nothing here to keep me, I want to go to Lancaster. And because I've always loved Lancaster. And during that time, my brother-in-law, God bless him, he asked to look at my homeowner's insurance. The house had belonged to my mother. That house was given to my great aunt and uncle on their wedding day in 1934. And then it went to my mom, and then it went to me. And I just put my name on her homeowner's policy. I didn't change it. I don't know anything about insurance. Well, I think that's part of a scam too. My mother got roped into paying for the best that they had. But thank God, because it really came to my aid And 2 weeks ago, I moved into a new house. So life has gotten better.
And I hear you had a pretty special escort when you moved in 2 weeks ago. Is that correct?
Unbeknownst to me, there were little angels working in the background, and my sister and her husband were at my house. I was at the apartment still packing, and Mark Solomon, who usually speaks with Paul and I, he had made arrangements with me to come help me move stuff. And he arrived and he said, come on, let's go to the house. And I said, no, I still have a lot of packing to do. So he took everything that was boxed up and he said, I'm going to go, but come with me. And I'm like, no, I really need to stay here. Now, come on, I'll bring you right back. All right. So I said, I need to call my sister and tell her that, because she's going to be mad when I show up, that the packing isn't done and I abandoned ship. I should be there packing. And I called and I said, how are you? And she said, entertaining. I said, who are you entertaining? She said, well, there's 3 police cars in the driveway. There's about 15 people from AARP and the IAFCI, and they all came from all corners. Mark is in Connecticut,
Yes.
right? And he drove down. Kathy Stokes, who's head of the AARP fraud division, drove up from Washington. Somebody flew in from Chicago. I don't even know who
Yep,
that was.
right, yep.
And they brought a big bouquet of balloons, which were tied out front, and a cake and sodas and muffins and what have you. Now, I moved into a 55 and over community, and we took, I should have put that on the slide. We took a picture out on the front lawn holding up a banner. And I want to tell you, almost every curtain up and down that street, there was somebody looking at. I have become a celebrity.
As you have, and New York Times have discovered
Yes.
Kate as well.
Yeah.
So, Kate, you're okay with some questions, right?
Yes.
I'd like to invite, now the one ground rule I always have with questions, please make your questions short. Don't go into a narrative and a story, okay? And wait
Okay.
for Trudy with the microphone. Okay, so here we go. Thank you. We're not ready. Okay. Anybody,
Just have a question.
anybody in the room? Hold on one second.
Thank you. I was about to ask about the email that you received from the UN about transferring the money to buy the air ticket. Was that a UN address? Or?
It looks like it, but they are so good at what they do. And they know the IT system much better than any of us do, and can create these things, and they look legitimate. So, I thought it was real.
Thank you. Rather than a question, I just want to express my gratitude to you. Expressing your story is so important, and your braveness and willingness to share your stories is really touching. I appreciate you. You're very brave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I was just wondering, was the law enforcement ever able to find out anything about these people?
Good question. Thank you.
Mm.
Kate,
Well, after I met Mark and Paul last summer, they took an interest in my case, and I don't know, I guess maybe I'm a little bit of a hoarder. I was an executive secretary, so I never got rid of email or anything. And I even had all of those gift cards that I sent over, but I lost them in the fire. I gave all my information to Mark, and he did a lot of legwork, which I was amazed at how much information he got. But it went so far, and they knew it was overseas, but I don't think they've gotten any further.
no, but Mark Solomon is a retired detective from Connecticut now working with another company, but he's got so many good connections, and we believe there is a Nigerian connection somewhere with a network of suspects. You never know because, and I found this in my own career, you think that a case is dormant or non-existent, and then suddenly a name cross refers to something else and it revives an old case. So you never know. we're not holding out great hope, but you never know. But the important thing is that that information has now been followed up, and it's very important to do that.
One thing, I'm sorry, just one second. One thing I forgot to say was when I was living in the hotel with nothing, Tony contacted me again. And I said, oh, I've had this fire. It's terrible. I lost all the dogs and going on and on and on. And he said, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I need $1,500. And I said, did you hear me? Did you listen to what I just said? I don't have any money. He said, oh, yes, you do. I said, no, I don't. He said, I know your friends started a GoFundMe page for you. And that sent the hair on the back of my neck standing straight up, because obviously he's keeping track. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, Kate, thank you so much.
Oh, thank
that
you for
riveting,
saying that.
Presentation, and I'm a fellow Philadelphian. So I
Oh,
wanna thank
nice,
you
nice.
again. But I wanted to share with the group that how pervasive this fraud, scam, and romance is.
Mhm.
My husband and I watched the show. The Brits do a great job, thank you, on their movies and presentations. And the scammer attended a support group for people who had been scammed
Oh,
to
no.
further scam them and also to further get information on how to scam.
Oh,
So you really have to be careful of even attending a support group for scammers. And he further scammed the woman who had already been scammed with his kind way of letting her know that, you know, that he was in her corner. So
Wow.
be careful. Right.
that's the worst.
Do we have any scammers in the room? Oh, okay, just check in. We're saying there's a question at the back, Trudy.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I have two questions. One, did you only transfer money by purchasing the gift cards? And then my second question is, were you ever given instruction by the investigators, like if Tony were to contact you again to continue communication or to report it?
Well, to answer the first one, he did ask, I think for the airfare money, he asked for that to be in Bitcoin. And I had never even heard of Bitcoin at that point. I had no idea where to go, what to do, but he told me. And I'm sorry, the second question again.
Did they ever tell you, law enforcement, say what to say to him or what to do if he
Oh, right.
contacted
sorry.
you?
Well, after I met Mark and Paul last summer and Mark started investigating, he said, as long as it doesn't hurt you, me, would you mind talking to him again? And so I did, and I could not identify his accent. But this one day, Tony apparently forgot that he had hit the call button, and there's all these people in the background because it was a boiler room, and they're all chatting in another language. So I took my phone, because this was coming over the computer, and I put it on video, and I held it up to the laptop, and I taped 18 minutes. In the state of Pennsylvania, both parties must agree to be recorded, so it's no good.
Were there any victim assistance program available to assist you with any of your losses as a senior in the scam?
No, see, I didn't know anything about where to go or who to report it to, or that there was any kind of help out there. So,
Until AARP Fraud Watch Network, right?
yes, yes, exactly.
Did anybody ever suggest putting a tap on your phone so they could trace the number that this person was calling from, unless it was?
Well, he was doing this through that app that is untraceable, so that wouldn't work.
Trudy?
Up here.
These detectives, were they able to find out if he really looked like that, or these were stolen photos?
Well,
or-
I can actually answer that because he's still calling through this, thing on the computer and saying he loves me and he still wants to get married and please just forget about what happened, But he finally told me that he would do a face-to-face call, which shocked me. And we did, and he's a 55-year-old Black Nigerian man. Not the guy that was up there on the pictures. That is a plastic surgeon from South America, a very successful person. That's why there's so many pictures of that guy out there. And so Tony would send me, I didn't have them up there, he would send pictures of that man and the two children, the boy and the girl. So, you know.
Oh, yes, carry on, then we'll go to the remote to see if we have any questions.
I'm sorry, I would like to
That's
add
all
for
right.
anyone here, you can Google photos and find out if they're online.
But I didn't know how to
I
do that
know,
at the
but-
time. You know?
Yeah, you know now. Yeah,
I
that's
had to
right.
find a younger person who would help me with that, you know.
Do we have some questions online?
Yeah, I'm going to come back over there.
Okay.
Kate, I happen to know that in addition to everything that you've been through, you are also paying it forward. Can you tell us a little bit about AARP's REST program, the Victim Support Program?
Yes, and I'm sure Liz could do a much better job with that than I can. I've actually been involved with a lot of people. I did volunteer to be on the REST program. It's a support group for people who have been scammed or their loved ones who are worried about that. And it's a wonderful, wonderful setup. I don't know the number offhand, but I'm sure we can get it for you, but that's wonderful. But I think this is a good time to bring up that I've been interviewed by more people, newspapers. I've been interviewed by TV people from across the country. And within the last 3 weeks, 2 different young men have gone to great lengths, and they're not related or know each other, to find me, either through the TV station and asking the interviewer to get in touch with me and what have you. Both their mothers have been in romance scams, and both of them are suicidal. Now, right away, I said, I am not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I can't, if they're really on the edge, you need to get them help. But if they want to talk to someone, I'd be happy to do that. And I've spent time with the 2 sons as well, because they're both upset. So I've put in, I don't know how many hours, but one of the ladies sent me flowers after I talked to her. So I think it's making a little bit of difference to be able to talk to somebody one-on-one like that and listen to them without any judgment.
The AARP REST program is a virtual online support program, and you can get more information on that by going to aarp.org/fraud, and that will direct you into
Yes.
that virtual online support program, the REST program.
Yeah, thank you.
And we've got some questions in the virtual world.
Hi, Kate or Paul. Does law enforcement know where a majority of these criminal scam cells operate from? Are they outside of the US, local, or just everywhere?
Maybe I can answer that. Just from my experience, we'll hear from the FBI after the break too, which is going to be fascinating. They're everywhere. But the good news is that we're learning more sophisticated methods on how to identify those that are operating overseas. And I've got to give a shout out to the US Attorney's Office around the country, because when I started prosecuting these cases in '96, nobody was doing anything about it. But now we've learned a lot more. And through collaboration, there's much more success in extraditing some of these suspects from all over the world. And we've had some successful prosecutions.
Sorry, first off, my name is Sarah, and I just want to commend you, Kate. I'm sorry this happened to you. You're very brave, and I'm sure you made a difference to everyone in this room, but you especially made a difference to me. Now, for those of you who can see me, I'm young. I'm very young. I'm 43, and I almost fell victim to what you did the same time you did. Thank God for my parents being the suspicious people that they are. So I wasn't, but just sitting here, I said to Trudy and to Amber, oh my God. So I just wanted to commend you and say that. And then I also wanted to ask you, how come law enforcement at first can be so like, well, it's not our problem? I mean, that really bothers me.
We're doing a great deal to try and turn that around. Not only that it is their problem, they need to at least take a report, but to change their thinking that how stupid are you? You know, it's not the victim's fault. These people get you under their ether. That's what AARP calls it. And you're very trusting. You know, earlier Chap said something about trust the person you're dealing with. Well, after a little while, I trusted Tony. I thought he was coming here to marry me. You know, so it's when you say I would never fall for it. I said that too.
Hi, my name is Gerarda Cullifer, and I also applaud you for sharing the story.
Thank you.
My question or my thought is this implicates everybody in our community. I don't care what age you are. You're either a preventative victim or you're a trust resource. So to all the young people in our lives, share these stories with the younger generation, because I'm the niece. I'm the daughter to my mother. I'm the friend of, I'm a contemporary to their second generation down. So if I get pinged as a trust resource, this information is my arsenal to help all of my sphere. So everybody listening, no, this is not an age specific thing.
No, it's not.
We're all in it together. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Last Friday evening, I was asked to speak to a government official from Malaysia, which was fascinating, just fascinating. And she's here in the States learning about fraud because they are putting the internet across the country of Malaysia. They're about 97% finished, but the more they get out there, the more scams that are coming in. And in that country, the greatest number of victims fall between the age of 13 and 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
There was a lady.
one more. Okay, great. Just one more and then.
Kate, thank you very much for sharing your story. I'm sorry you went through this.
Thank you.
Many of us in the room are, as was just pointed out, the next generation. We touch other people. What can we or others say in the face of talking with the victim of something like this that makes a difference? The difference between you who are moving forward and some of the other people that you have met and spoken with who are struggling.
Right.
What can we say that helps that journey for you?
I have said to the two women, especially, that this is not your fault. You have been assaulted just as if someone came up and punched you or stabbed you. This is an assault to your very soul, and it's not your fault. You know, you have to say that 100 times before the person will believe it. But keeping the judgment out, which is very difficult for anybody, trying to understand what happened, but trying to convince the person that it is a scam is also very difficult. If they've developed feelings for this person or they're lonely, the loneliness skyrocketed during the pandemic, and people were inside and have developed friendships online. So, that's, I think, part of the reason why there's so many more scams now. But to have, if the person could trust a younger person, a grandson or granddaughter, to help them try and track this person, do the facial recognition, what have you, close up the parameters on their Facebook account, which I had someone do for me, and not be afraid to ask for that help. Maybe their adult children don't have to know. Maybe they go right to the grandchild and ask for help. It's a hard one to get past, because it breaks your heart. Losing the money was devastating, but losing that relationship broke my heart. I cried for a long time after that.
Let's just say it out loud. You have enough friends. You do not need to become friends with strangers on the internet, okay? You are enough. You have enough friends. Paul, let's come back to you.
Great. Well, can you just join me in thanking Kate again for her story? Thank you so much, Kate. Appreciate it. Before the break, I'm just going to spend 10 minutes, if you don't mind, sharing some other tips that I've learned over the years of prosecuting these kinds of cases. Mike, I might need your help here, if you wouldn't mind. because, and I'll do this very quickly, but over the years, I've built up a series of tips. I used to start with my top 10 tips based upon David Letterman, but since then it's gone to like 18, but I won't get through all those today. But I just want to be able to share with you some of these lessons that I've learned. And I really think, thank you so much, Mike. One of the reasons I love doing these presentations, particularly with someone like Kate, is we're putting the spotlight, focus on the crime, not on the victim, but on the crime itself and on the perpetrator. And I always ask this question, who needs to be involved? And this lady said it well over here, all of us. It takes all of us to be part of the solution. It takes you and me. And what you've heard today, you can pass that on to others in your community and in your homes. I love this slide from Hawaii, because when we work together, we move forward, we make progress. We collaborate together, AARP, border supervisors, police officers, FBI, postal inspectors, APS, prosecutors. And this is my former office. I'm so proud to be associated with them. And during my 22 years as a lead prosecutor trying to protect the older adults, this was my biggest problem. How do I break through the barrier of silence? You know, Canada has called it, well, they said it thrives on silence. Predators rely on people not saying anything. The Attorney General for Kansas has called elder abuse the silent epidemic of our time. So you understand the problem we have here, overcoming this embarrassment, this fear of telling our story. 65% of all the cases that I prosecuted involve some form of fraud. And, you know, it's interesting, even the CDC has now called the elder exploitation a public health concern. Kate mentioned 2 ladies she recently spoke to or was talked to about who are on the verge of thinking suicidal thoughts. That's what happens to a lot of victims. So here's a few of the tips before our break. Choose a caregiver with great caution. Never hire through a newspaper. Don't ever hire through Craigslist. The first 2 letters of Craigslist are CR. The first 2 letters of Crook are CR. That is no coincidence, I promise you, okay? And always let your financial institution know when there's a change in circumstances that there's a caregiver coming into the home. Let them know so they can keep a special eye on your loved one's accounts for any unusual activities. Ask the agency to show you what background checks they have done when you're considering hiring a caregiver through an agency. Don't rely on F references. And I've even said, consider hiring a private investigator. Why are so many of the defendants that I prosecuted caregivers? Well, you think about it. What is there in the home that can be taken? Jewelry, coins, cash, easily converted into cash. The defendants that I prosecuted thought that the victim wouldn't find out, or that they, quote, wouldn't press charges. And they always have a reason for taking the money. I was owed overtime or whatever. See this lady in the middle? She killed the gentleman on the left after stealing almost $600,000 of his money. We've never found out where she murdered him, how she murdered him, but we know she did. We couldn't produce a body for the jury, but the jury convicted her of first-degree murder. This gentleman on the left, Jack Parks, hired a caregiver after his wife died through a newspaper, and she then ended up killing him. I prosecuted her for murder. This gentleman was a true hero, a Pearl Harbor survivor, and he was exploited by his caregiver, isolated. Thankfully, neighbors got suspicious and called for APS, Adult Protective Services, to do a welfare check, and they brought in a deputy sheriff who broke down the door to find the gentleman laying in filth in his kitchen. How did she get away with it? She isolated him by putting up notices like this on the windows. Don't come near, don't bother us. Why? Because she was stealing all his money. We found this cash in the back bedroom where she was living. One of the very first defendants I prosecuted was a caregiver who had been a professional thief out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And She came to San Diego and the agency unfortunately did not do a background check on her, didn't know she was a parolee. Tip number 2, the first item that is stolen is jewelry. And I always say, please keep all your jewelry locked up. Keep an inventory of all your jewelry. Photograph it, video it. You see all these ladies, these were all my victims in a courtroom one day. They were all victimized by the same defendant. He was the maintenance guy in their assisted living facility. And whenever they had a problem with a dripping faucet or a broken TV, he would come in and tell them, why don't you go downstairs and have a cup of coffee while I fix the problem? Well, he would repair the problem, but he would also steal their jewelry. We need to shred everything that contains any information about ourselves, right? We shred it. Crisscross is best. But just don't shred with a tie on, okay? That's dangerous, okay? Never do it with a tie. Why do we shred everything? Because there are dumpster divers living in Fairfax County. Did you know that? Yeah, they're everywhere. They sift through our trash. Please protect your incoming and outgoing mail. If you have an unlocked mailbox, the chances are very high that some of your mail will be stolen today. And so I always say, get a locked mailbox, or if you can't, get a PO box. And with checkbooks, and some of you are saying, what's a check? I know, but there is such a thing called a checkbook. And if you order a new checkbook, do me a favor. Tell your bank or credit union, only put my first initial and my last name on the checks. Nothing else. No address, no phone number, no nothing. And then always ask to pick up your checkbook from the bank or the credit union. Don't rely on in transit because it could be stolen in transit. Please do a credit search on yourselves at least 2 or 3 times a year, going through Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. You can go online and do an annualcreditreport.com search on yourself. It's safe. I've done it. And it's a good way of checking to see if anyone has obtained a credit card in your name without you knowing. And if you're not going to be applying for a loan or a mortgage, then consider freezing your credit, because that is one good way of at least reducing the risk of becoming a victim of identity theft. This is and I can give you some of this information later. Tip number 6, obviously caller ID, but it's not foolproof because the criminals know how to spoof Fairfax Police Department's phone number. So you may think you're getting a phone call from Fairfax Police. No, it's probably from a scammer. Please don't be afraid to hang up. If you don't recognize the number, let it go to message. But why are we so curious? Why do we always want to answer the phone when it rings? Try to let it go to message. And remember, they can mimic real phone numbers. I like this one. Keep a whistle by the phone. And when you get that annoying extended warranty for your car phone call at dinner time, just blow the whistle down the phone, will you? 2 things. It gives you good exercise for your diaphragm, but secondly, it gives him an earache. And you're going to get robocalls on your cell phone all day long. And one way that I reduce that is by, I pay for it, but it's worth it. You get an app on your phone. Mine is called RoboKiller. I like it. It blocks a lot of scam calls. This is going to ruin your Saturday morning. You'll never win the foreign lottery. Oh, I'm so sorry, but you won't. I promise you, you will never get that silver Mercedes in your driveway. But unfortunately, I had several victims in San Diego who lost a lot of money to that. I even had a retired Catholic priest who was the victim of the Publishers Clearinghouse. $41,000 he lost, but we traced it to South Carolina. This is the crook. And we found him and we extradited him back from the East Coast. And there he is. What a charming young man he was. And then get a look at this, the IRS. They send you a letter. But how do you know it's a fake? Because crooks do not know how to spell. Do you see it? Yes, the IRS doesn't have a lottery department. They have a lottery department. See the 3rd line down? Lottery. That's a big giveaway. How do you know that this is a scam? It comes from Chicago. Oh, that's a good one. Are you from Chicago? Okay. But look to the right. The last time I checked, Chicago had not been overrun by Parisians. Okay, French. This came from Montreal, Quebec. Okay, and inside the envelope was a letter congratulating my victim that she become the millionaire. And inside the letter was a check. Would you ever trust a check from virtual Las Vegas? I hope not, but she did, and she cashed it, and she withdrew $3,700 to pay for, quote, the taxes. Thankfully, I was able to get the bank to reimburse her, but it took a struggle. You've heard this already, the IRS will never call you. But just in case you didn't hear that, they will never call you. And just in case you didn't hear that, they will never call you, okay? And then you've heard this one, the grandson will never be calling you from jail. But as I always tell people, if there's two things, your grandson will never call you from jail, but if he does, let him stay there, okay? So there's the grandma scam, and they're now asking for iTunes gift cards or Target gift cards. And now guess what? We have artificial intelligence to combat. And now we're getting scammers actually mimicking the grandson's real voice. And that is proving to be a real challenge. And the final one is the one that Kate has been telling us about. Don't look for love in all the wrong places. But careful of this, some victims become mules, money mules, by helping the crook transfer the money to other people. Despite warnings, they still do it. So we need to warn victims that they could end up becoming defendants. This lady, 81 years of age, Glenda Syme, last year became a convicted felon because she was a money mule who fell in love, just like Kate did, and wouldn't believe anybody that was warning her, and she kept sending money, and eventually the US Attorney's Office had to prosecute her for being a conduit, and she's now on a 5-year felony probation. My time is up. My mother always said to me, don't ever go over your time, so I won't. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Trudy. Thank you so much.
And we are now going to do a 15-minute stretch break because I see some of you are wiggling around in your chairs, and I'm sure you're wiggling around at home as well. So we will be back at 11 o'clock. Kate and Paul will be back with us. They will be joined by individuals from the FBI, United States Postal Service, Fairfax County Police, Fairfax County Area on Aging. So please come back and join us for part 2, but let's get a little bit of a break in. Oh, do you want to get in contact with Paul? No. Yes. I'm registering for this program.
Our story begins more than 60 years ago inside an abandoned chicken coop, where our founder discovered a retired teacher living, no home, no health care. So she said no to this injustice and yes to transforming lives. It's this drive, this compassion that inspired AARP. Today, we empower people to choose how they live as they age. As a wise friend and fierce defender, we advocate for better health, financial security, and stronger communities. AARP, join us in making a difference.
There's nothing quite like local. So at AARP, we connect people to what matters most in the places they call home. We're here to help your money, health, and happiness live longer. Connect with us at aarp.org/local.
I matched with this cutie on a dating site. We texted all the time, but never met up. Then he asked to send him gift cards for a plane ticket to see me. And that's when I remembered a tip I got from the AARP Fraud Watch Network. Gift cards? This is a romance scam. Spent that money on self-care instead.
Recognize fraud sooner so your money lives longer. The younger you are, the more you need AARP.
I was doing some shopping and got a pop-up on my laptop. Computer had a virus. So I called the number on the page and the guy on the phone wants to take control of my screen to sort it out. Then I remember a tip I got from the AARP Fraud Watch Network. Control my screen. This is a tech support scam. Thankfully, my order still went through.
Recognize fraud sooner so your money lives longer. The younger you are, the more you need AARP.
Testing.
So, I'm playing with the dog, and I get this robocall from the Social Security Administration saying my card had been suspended and I had to call them back immediately. And that's when I remembered a tip. The AARP Fraud Watch Network. Random robocall? This is a Social Security scam.
Recognize fraud sooner,
Robots.
so your money lives longer. The younger you are, the more you need AARP. The moment you realize you're ready for what's next in your career, that's when we start planning it together. Let's start planning earlier for a career that lives longer.